It used to be we needed 3 R's, but today maybe 1 R would do. We'll find out why this week on Motoring 2003.
TSN's Motoring 2003 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil, oils fine-tuned for different engines, and Midas, Total Car Care. We do that.
Volvo has been building cars since 1976, and it built its reputation on safety. As for styling, well, did I hear somebody say boxy? Well, of course, every car company is now into safety. And in 1997, Volvo finally threw away the box with the introduction of the C70. Safety was still paramount, but now with a little added spice. Well, now everybody is talking about high gas prices and saving the planet, but Volvo has noticed that other car companies are making oodles of money with high performance. So it seems only fitting that this week we find ourselves at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway as Volvo introduces the most powerful cars the company has ever built.
First of all, Volvo is the leader in safety, and that's our focus and will always be our focus. The approach we've taken in developing these performance cars comes from our philosophy that cars are driven by people and the safety approach. So we've developed performance cars in a controlled way, if you may. We've developed cars that can perform very, very well. 300 horsepower engine, you got a 6-speed manual transmission, you have a Brembo brakes with the aluminum calipers, you got a 4C active chassis in these cars. So when you then experience these vehicles, you get a sense of confidence and enjoyment. At the same time, you can get a sense of protection, because they are truly Volvo.
Being at a racetrack is like an oxymoron for Volvo. I mean, we've had tuned cars before, but we've never put everything together like we've done with the S60R and the V70R. We now have a performance vehicle that is capable of being on a racetrack and yet capable of being a family car too, which is very Volvo. The most outstanding features is the 300 horsepower, plus the all-wheel drive, and plus the 4C chassis system. So we've made a vehicle that has incredible performance and yet can be a very family-oriented car because of the different settings. We have a comfort setting, sport setting, and an advanced setting. And the comfort is like a regular sedan. The sport is a little more performance, but the advanced is like a racetrack performance.
It's 300 horsepower, but the most important thing is the 295 pound-feet of torque and the ability to deliver that torque to the ground and get the car moving forward. 5.4 seconds with a 6-speed manual gearbox, controlled by the all-wheel drive system, the DSTC, and the 4C chassis all working together. We've got several sensors, accelerometers that can actually literally sense what the driver is going to do next.
First impression, the drivetrain's the best they've ever done. The combination of engine and the 6-speed are just flawless. 300 horsepower without any hard edges. The suspension is very capable, but it seems like it needs the electronic assist to really let it shine. When it's in the basic setting, it's a rather floaty vehicle that I don't find very appealing. But in that sports setting or the advanced setting, it's a big sports sedan or a big sport wagon. Not as agile as some of the German products, but more than I expected from Volvo.
The wagon will be the fastest production wagon in North America, and it just gives you a different option as a customer. Now you can haul stuff, and you can do it quickly, safely, and in a great fashion. It really brings a new dimension to what a station wagon or a sports wagon is.
Are we going to go up against BMW? Well, that's for people to decide. We're in a new market. I mean, we're a niche marketer, and now we've said that we can have performance without forsaking safety. So we've added a new dimension to the Volvo brand that goes far beyond what we've done before.
You know, in the U.S. right now, safety is extremely important. Nobody owns that moniker better than Volvo. And if you're buying a car like an S60 sedan or even that V70R wagon, that's a high-performance machine, but your spouse says, is it safe? And you say, hey, it's a Volvo. That's kind of like the best of both worlds for most families.
Far be it from me to counsel you to break the law, but more later on Kenzie's Corner.
You know, whenever a sports car is launched in Canada, it always seems as though somewhere around the world there's a bigger, better, more powerful version. And that's been especially true of Subaru. Well, that all officially stops right here and now. This week on Test Drive, we take a look at the much anticipated WRX STI from Subaru. Lift the STI's hood and you'll find an upsized 2.5-litre turbocharged engine that produces prodigious power. With 300 horsepower and 300 pounds-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM, this engine transforms a serious car into a world beater. The good news is that unlike the base WRX, there is no turbo lag when the pedal is punched off the line. The addition of variable valve timing on the intake cam and a large turbo that blows 14.5 psi down the engine's throat accounts for the very linear and strong feel. So how well does it all work? The STI romps from rest to 100 kilometers an hour in 5 seconds. Now that's good enough to dust the Porsche 911 and is a match for BMW's world-beating M3. So why would Subaru build a shower into the STI? I'll tell you what it's not for, and that's to keep the intercooler clean. Rather, it's there to keep it cool. Quite simply, the cooler the air, the denser it becomes. The denser the air, the bigger the bang, well, the faster the car goes, quite simply. On a hot day, dousing that intercooler with cool water, well, it gets rid of the shortfall of horsepower that would otherwise occur. From the engine, the horses are funneled through a new 6-speed manual transmission. Not only are the shifts slick and short and the clutch remarkably civilized considering the power, the extra cog and short ratios ensure the engine remains at a roaring boil as you run up through the box. Naturally, the STI features a derivative of Subaru's world-class all-wheel drive system, which brings limited slip differentials front, centre and rear. Under normal circumstances, 35% of the power goes forward, the rest goes to the rear wheels. At the first sign of slippage, the centre diff begins to lock, eventually splitting the power 50-50. However, as with the rest of the car, there is a twist. Where the all-wheel drive system differs on the STI is the fact that there's a manual mode. After you hit the button, you can use a thumb wheel to scroll through a variety of different torque splits, all the way from the base 65-35 right the way up to locking the center differential, splitting the torque 50-50 for those very slippery moments. However, the bottom line, leave the system in automatic because it really is that good at what it does. Straight line speed is all well and good, but a true speedster needs the right road manners as well. And that the STI has, as it is capable of pulling a body-bending .93 G on a skid pad. The secret lies in a stiffer, stronger suspension and a massive set of 225/45 R17 gumballs that really do stick like glue. Through the pylons, the STI hauled serious arse, easily rivaling the fastest run ever recorded in 16 years of motoring. Even when dancing at the limit, there is next to no body roll, minimal understeer or oversteer, and a lightning quick response to steering input. The downside, if you can call it that, is a firmer ride. That said, it is not too stiff to live with on a daily basis. The changes inside the STI are subtle, but effective nonetheless. The steering wheel, for example, is slightly smaller, which gives you a much better sense of what's happening at the road wheels. These unique blue seats, well, they provide superior lateral and lumbar support. The gauges, every time you start the car, they do a neat little dance back and forth, and you get aluminum pedals. What Subaru forgot to soup up was this silly cup holder. If you start using this car to potential and pulling the lateral G's it's capable of, well, all of the coffee that's in this cup sitting in here, it's going to disappear right down into the CD player. The moral of the story, drink your coffee in the shop, not in the car. Stopping a sports car is as important as motivating it, so the STI gets an enormous set of binders. The discs are massive and squeezed by equally large 4-pot Brembo calipers up front. As a result, the stops are incredibly short and completely fade-free. Even the parking brake has a party trick. If a handbrake turn is just too much to resist, the STI recognises this and immediately unlocks the all-wheel drive system, so the back end slides out and into a perfect four-wheel drift. Subaru's STI really does function as promised. It is very, very quick, got great brakes and handling, and an all-wheel drive system that's about the best there is in the world. However, this monstrosity, well, it really is a spoiler. Not only does it do very little for the looks, it effectively blocks the view through the rear view mirror. Now, if Subaru are smart, they'll make this thing a delete option, and sooner rather than later.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns topping up your engine oil level in between oil changes. And the question that we're often asked is, if you find the oil level halfway between the add and the full mark on the dipstick, should you add a partial liter of oil? Now, usually on most vehicles, the add mark is usually indicating 1 liter low on oil level. So if you're halfway down, it's reasonable to assume half a liter of oil. Should you top it up at that level? Well, I say absolutely, and every time. If you check that oil level and you find that it's low, top it up. If it takes 400 milliliters, 500 or 600, whatever it takes, top it up. Because the oil bottles now are all reclosable, so you can take a 1 liter bottle and pour half of it out and reclose it, keep it in the trunk of your car for the next top up. Now, the reason that I advise people to do that is that mentally they reset their service schedule as of the point that they've just checked the oil. So if you've checked it and it's down half a liter of oil and you don't do something about it, mentally, a month from now, you're going to think, yeah, I checked that oil and it was fine. Now it's probably down at least a liter or maybe more. So every time you check it and find it low, top it up. Now you should change it on a regular interval based on months and miles. Consult your owner's manual, and in most cases, Canadian driving parameters will dictate that you use the severe service intervals in your owner's manual. That's when you should change it. But top it up every time you find it low, and find out why it's going through oil. You may have a leak, a sending unit or something that's losing a bit of oil. Correct those leaks and keep it topped up. That's your Midas tip of the week.
RX330 created the segment, the intermediate luxury segment. It was the first one that really came into the marketplace, and quite frankly, the competitors came in after that. So RX330 is the next generation. I think it sets the next standard for Lexus and for that whole segment. It provides the leadership it did when it was initially introduced into Canada. I think people that drive that type of vehicle, particularly with Lexus, they're looking for luxury. They're looking for refinement. Quite frankly, they are not off-road people, but they want the convenience, they want the performance, and they want that all-wheel drive. It was really no surprise to us, I think, that when a plant had to be chosen for North America to build the first Lexus out of Japan, that it went to Cambridge. It has produced the Corolla in the past, it's produced the Solara, and of course the all-new Matrix. And all those are award-winning vehicles.
It's quite high priced, but starting at just under $50,000. But when you look at what else is out there for $50,000, this car comes with a lot of very high-level equipment, both in terms of luxury and things like driving aids and rain sensing wipers, a lot of high-tech stuff that is valuable. There's not a lot of gimmicks in this car, I find, too. It's not super quick, but it's certainly got adequate, more than adequate power, and makes good use of it.
Very often, a lot of so-called SUVs or hybrids or crossovers, you sit in the back and you're a second-rate passenger when you're in the rear. This vehicle was really, I found it really surprising, with the seat back that reclines and how well you're seated, how much room there is. So that really impressed me.
RX300 has always been the volume seller for Lexus in Canada, and the RX330 will continue to do that. Do we want to increase our sales? Absolutely. Do we want to take some business from the competition? Yes, sure, we want to do that as well.
You know, when somebody tells me they're going for a test drive, I always suggest that they drive the car not only in the daytime but also at night. Car makers spend a lot of money on the interior, including the lighting. Well, the new Volvo R cars have one of the coolest instrument clusters I've ever seen, a sort of steel blue. It looks great in the daytime, but at night it is awesome. Sometimes I can hardly keep my eyes on the road. Just kidding. All right, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Brad, I'll show you awesome this week. You know, if you're a regular viewer of this show, I'm sure you've seen my Chevy pickup truck on here many times. It's a 92 and I've got 364,000 kilometers on it. I thought that was pretty high mileage, but compared to this truck that I've got here today, mine's just barely broken in. This truck is a 95 model, came out of the United States, and it's got 1 million miles on it. That's 1.6 million kilometers. And when it reached 1 million miles, Pennzoil bought this vehicle back, or exchanged it for another new pickup truck, gave the customer a brand new pickup, and took this one back. Reason being, this fellow was a customer of one particular Pennzoil oil change location. He was there every 4 working days. He used this truck to deliver newspapers. He apparently had a route that comprised 3 states. He was on the road 2/3 of every day driving this truck. I did the math on it. In order to roll 1 million miles, he was behind the wheel for about 800 miles every day. He must have been some kind of an Ironman. Anyhow, talking about iron, we measured the wear on this engine, took out the original engine, this is it right here mounted in the back of the truck, and put a new engine in it so we could analyze the engine that had rolled 1 million miles. And what we found was, of course, there was some wear and tear and some deposits in that engine, but not nearly what we expected to see with 1 million miles. And there's not a whole lot of precedent for this, so we really didn't know what we were going to see. When this engine was torn down and the cylinder bores were measured, the piston rings were looked at, the crank rod and main bearings were all measured for wear, and we checked things like camshaft lobe wear and the base of the lifters. There wasn't nearly the wear we expected to see with that kind of miles. This engine was still in viable condition, serviceable condition. It could have been left in service. We tore it down to analyze it. We've got all the parts here disassembled, and we've got the cutaway engine. We're going to use this truck as the focal point of our National Car Care Month tour. What we're talking about here is the importance of good maintenance, quality name brand products, using proper lubricants, keeping the crankcase full of quality lubricant, and using quality filters, and changing those lubricants and filters on a regular basis. If you do that, your car or truck is going to give you more miles than most people are going to get. I'm sure you've all heard stories of people with 100,000 kilometers on their car and having to replace an engine already. They're the guys that didn't do their homework, didn't do proper maintenance, didn't change the oil when they should have. This guy was right on top of things with his maintenance schedule, obviously every 4 working days in for an oil change, and that's why his vehicle lasted as long as it did. Now, you all know that when you take a vehicle and trade it in or try and sell it as a used vehicle, if it has high mileage, and most people think 200,000 kilometers is pretty high, you take a vehicle with 200,000 kilometers and try and sell it as a used vehicle or trade it in at a dealer, they're going to give you peanuts for it, because they come out and say, well, we'd really like to allow you X number of dollars, but you know, with those kind of miles, sorry, we can't. You've got to pretty well give the thing away. Well, if you've done your homework all the way along, keep driving it, because all that money that you've spent on maintenance is now going to pay off for you. That thing's going to last you a long period of time. Never mind what it's worth to someone else. It's worth a lot to you as viable transportation if you've looked after it. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2003.
Now, to some people, consistency is a virtue. Now, I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of cursed with that kind of feeling myself. Other people feel consistency is boring. It's an inhibition to creativity. It's one small step to anal retentiveness. I started thinking about this when I noticed how people behave at stop signs. Now, I've been known to be somewhat less than consistent in obeying certain traffic laws. Speed limits, for example, I obey twice a day, once on the way up and once on the way down. But at stop signs, I've always made a point of coming to a complete and full stop behind the stop sign as the law requires you to do. But the other day I got thinking, why? If you can see where everybody's coming, you can see the traffic flow, what's the difference between 0 kilometers an hour and 5 kilometers an hour? Well, to a police officer, it's 4 demerit points and about $100. But from a traffic flow point of view, coming to a complete stop doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's harder on your car, on your brakes, it's harder on fuel economy, it's harder on emissions, and there's a pretty good likelihood that if you stop, the guy behind you won't. Bam, he's going to run into you. Now, in England, they don't have many stop signs. They've got a dotted line on the road at the intersection, and you're required to come to a stop if you have to, but if you don't have to, everything's fine, you roll right through. So what do people in Canada do? Pretty much like this guy does. Roll right on through, and you know, he might just be right. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, for the past 2 weeks, automotive journalists from around the world have been coming here to Las Vegas to check out Volvo's new R cars, which led one journalist to wonder why, considering the company is bringing in less than 4,000 cars to North America. Well, the answer might be that yes, Volvo wants to showcase the new S60R and the V70R, but they also want to tell people that they are evolving. They set the benchmark with safety, and they believe that now they're going to do the same when it comes to performance. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
This is performance educational driving, and it's amazing. When I'm at home, I drive like a snail because I've got it out of my system. It's a blast.
TSN's Motoring 2003 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil, oils fine-tuned for different engines, and Midas, Total Car Care. We do that.